It's with very mixed emotions we host this evening. It's an honor for us to be able to bring together so many alumni and Talmidim, the family, to the place that was Rabbi Farber Zichrono Livracha's second home. Some of the family may say it was his first home, but second home for over 30 years. So we have 5 Choshev Hespedim, which I'm going to just give the general introduction now, then each one will come up. Rabbi Yitzchak Hirshfeld, the Rosh Yeshiva, who worked with Rabbi Farber and Yitzchak Shurin, the Rosh Midrashah, again, both of whom worked with Rabbi Farber for decades. Rabbi Shuster, who was here for many, many years, I think may have even known Rabbi Farber from the Chaim Berlin days, or Rabbi Shurin also. Reuven Stone, who was a Talmud Muvak. It was through Rabbi Farber that he got such a kesher with Rabbi Yonis and David. And from the family, we'll hear Rabbi Shimon, the oldest son, is also going to share some words. I just want to open with something that it's almost, I think in the modern terminology, they call it a trigger warning. You're going to hear unbelievable things, I'm sure, about Rabbi Farber. And all of you who knew him knew unbelievable things about him. The Talmidim will hear unbelievable things. But I think it's very important that I share with you a letter from his Rebbe, Rav Hutner, Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal, that he wrote back in 1963. And as usual, Rav Hutner was always ahead of the curve. He saw things coming. And he writes to a Talmud that it's Ra'ach Chola Etzleinu. It's an illness that has come into our community, that when we talk about Gedolim, we always talk about the Gedolim at the end of their lives. Now, what's wrong with that? Because, says Rav Hutner, we're making it seem like they were born with that shleimus. He uses the example that the Chafetz Chaim was born with a golden tongue, not talking Lashon Hara, and it ignores, says Rav Hutner, the struggles that that the Chafetz Chaim had to go through to become a Chafetz Chaim. And he continues, we're selling Gedolim short when we make it sound like they were born with silver spoons. They were born with their shleimus. And in fact, they had to work very hard to acquire their shleimus. And Rav Hutner was also being meramis to himself, because Rav Hutner was not always Rav Hutner. And he worked very hard to become what he was. And we're going to hear unbelievable things about Rav Farber. The hashpah that he had on the yeshiva is inconceivable. And we have to again acknowledge to the family that his influence on so many Talmidim was simply beyond description. But it's important to know that he wasn't born, he was born Mendel Farber, but he wasn't born Rabbi Farber. And he worked very hard to become the Adam Hashalem that he was, and that when all of the things you're going to hear, and hopefully will be role models for you. He was a role model when you were in the yeshiva, but you have to understand that it took hard work, and part of the way to honor his memory and give his neshama even bigger aliyah is for you to be inspired to strive to what he accomplished and investing the hard work that he did to become what he was. We'll start with Rabbi Hirshfeld.
Very difficult to try to put into words the process that we have. 30 years of witnessing, being the mechitzasa shel by Farber. For approximately 30 years, Rabbi Farber and our yeshiva were as inseparable as a person and his shadow. He didn't miss Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Simchas Torah, Shavuos, as long as he was physically capable of walking all the way from Bayit Lagan to here and to all the places where the yeshiva was. He wasn't Tanhola. Officially, he was a Rebbe among the Rebbeim of the yeshiva. but he wasn't of the staff. He hovered above the staff and cast a giant shadow whose presence permeated every corner of the yeshiva and beyond. Anecdotes, stories are helpful in piecing together who the person is. I don't plan to tell too many stories to illustrate the godless of Mendel, but by way of introduction to my remarks, I will mention one story, which, because of my position, only I could know. As you all know, Mendel was blessed with a large family, and as the years went by, there were many family smachot, risse, erusin, weddings, children, for grandchildren, for great-grandchildren. They were coming thick and fast. Yet without fail, Mendel would always approach me, somewhat bashfully, to ask permission to leave early or come a little late. The anova, the humility, the nikius. In Yiddish we would say the shenkeit and the reinkeit, the purity and beauty and the splendor of a true Jewish prince. He was always so careful never to overstep the bounds and would always try to make sure he was the first here in the morning. He was the last to leave many times. He was always dedicated in everything that he gave to the yeshiva. I'm not going to focus on details, but on the klal. Mendel was a Baal Hashpah. He had a tremendous hashpah on so many Talmidim. He was a Mayan Amizgaber, a fountain of influence over so many people, so many hundreds of Talmidim over the course of the 30 years that he was here. For many of the Talmidim, he was the source of hashpah. Of all the Rebbeim in the yeshiva, so many gravitated towards him and found him to be the one who could give them a direction, an inspiration, moving forward, a growth in their lives. What was the source of the hashpah? How did it happen that he changed so many lives? So I recently heard a story. I heard it on the radio, so I don't know if it's true. But I heard a story about a conversation held between one of the great Rosh Yeshivas of our generation and Rabbi Leib Steinman. The visiting Rosh Yeshiva and Rabbi Steinman discussed deep Torah matters, as befits two Gedolei Yisrael. And then the visitor indicated that he would like some private words with Rabbi Steinman. What happened in that private conversation? Afterwards, the Rosh Yeshiva let the other people know. What happened in that private conversation, that Rosh Yeshiva asked Rabbi Steinman, I have a kasha. He said, L'chora, my shiurim are more sophisticated and deeper than your shiur. L'chora, he says, my shmuzim, my sichot are more original, go into deeper concepts than the kind of shmuzim that Reb Shimon would say. So I have a big kasha, he said. Why is it that you have so much more hashpah in the world than I do? What's the secret? Shimon thought for a few minutes. And then he said, tell me, when you prepare a shear, how long does it take you? I said, if it's a new shear that I haven't never given before, a good few hours to prepare a good shear. And when you prepare a shmooze, how long does it take you? Also, it's a new shmooze. I devote time. I never stand up and speak in public without preparing myself properly. There is statement, but to be a Baal Hashpah, it takes 90 years of preparation. And that's why I became a Baal Hashpah. That's how the story goes. And the Rosh Yeshiva went out to tell everybody else his amazing insight that he had just learned from the Gadol Hador from Hirshfeld. So let's try to think. What must happen in those 90 years of preparation? How is the preparation to be a mashpia so qualitatively different than the preparation to deliver an outstanding shir or shmooze? In this week's parsha, there's a well-known kasha that many Meforshim deal with. Avraham Avinu wants to find a shidduch for Yitzchak, and he goes sends Eliezer Eved Avram to his family, to Lavan. And the question is asked by many Meforshim, what was the great Maila of Lavan? It was Eved Avodah Zarah. What was the grace of Glick? Why was he a better shidduch material than the Bnei Canaan? And the Drashas Haran is one of the first to deal with the question. Many Meforshim say, they explain it as follows. There's a fundamental difference between ideas and midos. Midos, good or bad, are hereditary. While hashkafa and wisdom, good or bad, are not. Why is that so, says the Ran? Because midos are in the heart, in the lifeblood, which is the very essence of the person. That is something that is given over to next generations. While ideas are in the intellect, which are above and beyond the real personality. But then we have to ask the question, isn't the goal of learning Torah that the Torah should become one with the person should become one with the Torah? What does it mean that the Torah is above? What does it mean that the Torah is beyond? So I think that we can understand, we look at Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which I think is so very relevant to understanding the idea of Hashpah and the idea of who Rabbi Farber's Zifron L'Bracha was. The Mishnah says, Reb Chanina ben Dosa Omer, Kol sheyiras cheto kodemes lechochmoso, chochmoso miskayemes. Somebody who with fear of sin precedes his chochmah will last, will have a lasting effect. Kol shechochmoso kodemes liroso, yiras cheto ein chochmoso miskayemes. Hu haya Omer, Kol shemaisav mirubi mechachmoso, whose ever maisim, whose ever deeds, his mitzvos, are greater than his chachma, chachmoso miskayemes. V'chol shechachmoso miruba mimaisav et chachmoso miskayemes. And the Maharal explains, in order for the Torah to have its profound effect, the person has to have a foundation of yira, of maisim, the yira of the heart, the maisim which are the guf which is connected to the heart. When that foundation is there, the Torah can come in and be connected to the person, and then the person's chachma is miskayim because it's within him 100%. It's his kinyan. The Farber, Zechron L'Bracha, prepared himself for a lifetime of full-time chinuch for close to 60 years. The Farber wasn't always a Rebbe in the yeshiva. For most of his adult life, for much of his adult life, he was a businessman. He was a perfect example of Asay Toroscha Kval Malachtecha Aroi, the malacha that he was osik in America, and also here when he and his family made Aliyah, was malacha, which he spent time on every day. But the ikar part of his life was the hours that he spent in the Beis Medrash every single day, and learning with the bren and learning with a zeal of people much younger than him, even better than people much younger than him. He was a beautiful example. His work life and the hours he devoted to learning in the Beis Medrash were one beautiful tapestry of growth in Avodas Hashem. But then the call came. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his wisdom, knew that Mendel had developed his heart to the point when he was ready, willing, and able to draw from the depths of his Torah heart and begin to really have Heshpah. And then it was our good fortune in the yeshiva that he chose our Mokom Torah as the place, the venue for which he would be able to spread and Torah, teach Gemara, teach Hashkafa, teach all of the things that he taught, share of all of that beautiful Torah that was within him to our Talmidim. So when Rav Farber taught the deepest concepts of the Maharal and of his Rebbe, the Pachad Yitzchak, it was Torah which welled up from the deepest parts of his heart and it transfused into the hearts of his Talmidim. The connection was a connection, person to person. And what was pure in his heart was directly transfused into their hearts. If you have Rav Farber's blood pulsing in your veins, then you are transformed. You become a Rabbi Farber B'Zeir Anpus. Rabbi Farber was truly someone whose Yira preceded his Chochmah, whose Maisim were more than his Chochmah, and his Torah is mitkayemet and mitkayemet. It's mitkayemet in the hearts and the souls of hundreds and hundreds of Talmidim. Tzetzaeim, v'tzetzaetzaeim. We look around us and we see all of the beautiful alumni who was mashpiyan. It didn't stop there. Generations, Deiros and Deiros of Hashpah. This was the Torah Shem Miskayemes and Miskayemes. A Bia Melitz Yesher for the family, for our whole yeshiva, and for all of Klal Yisrael in these trying times.
Truth of the matter is that I have a connection with Mendel, not just from Chaim Berlin before me, but my father was a teacher of Mendel Farber. My father taught Mendel Digduk and Tanakh in Chaim Berlin, Stone Avenue. But even more so, we both grew up in East New York, and we both went to Torres Chaim. I mean, he went there a little bit before me, but we both went to Torres Chaim, and then we went to Chaim Berlin together. By the time I was already in the high school, was already not it just moved out of Stone Avenue, then to Far Rockaway, and then it moved to Flatbush. And of course, something that Reb Mendel Zatzal didn't want to talk about was the hashpah he had on the Rosh Yeshiva, Yitzchak Hutner, to actually buy the building in Flatbush. I had to talk with him about it. I heard about it, and in his great anivus, he said, I did have a little bit of an influence. He had more than a little bit of an influence. Later on, I spoke to Rabbi von Fruchtdale. There was a lot more than a little bit of an influence. But I always remember, I saw Rav Farber mostly when I was I'm the head of the women's school. So when it came to the women's school, and I'm going to try to give over a little bit of an impression what the women saw in Rav Farber. Rav Farber always, without exception, wanted to give a uptight in anything. In other words, of course, he gave a deeper understanding of a Maharal or a Chazal or a Pachad Yitzchak. But anytime I spoke to him, even about a Godel B'Torah, he always had like a taich in that Godel B'Torah. Nothing to him was just straight. There's a certain depth that every thing and every person has. We spoke about the Matzav in Eretz Yisrael. He also said a taich in what he thought the Matzav in Eretz Yisrael was. He was a person who had a depth in, it didn't matter if it was a Chazal or just walking down the street. Because, of course, everything, according to the Maharal, according to the Rosh Yeshiva, has a certain depth to it beyond the superficial. It doesn't matter if it looks like if it's Kodesh or it looks like it's just Chol. Doesn't matter. So I want to, just for a moment, give a deeper understanding of who I felt Reb Mendel Zatzal was. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter learned by his Musa. The whole Musa movement grew out of a Balabas. Rabbi Yosef Zundel Misalan. Yisrael Salanter, I can just read I have it here, I'll read just a short, in a Ha'ara, it's a well-known Ha'ara Rabbi Yisrael Salanter wrote about Rabbi Yosef Zundel Misalan. I'll only read a short piece of it. V'yatzakti mayim al yedei moiri harav Yosef Zundel hayoshev b'Yushalayim. Because he made Aliyah, I don't know if you call it Aliyah, but he went up there to Shurin. Vad kolo higati lekar sulav. And until now, I didn't get to his ankles. So Salanter writes about Yosef Zundel. Hu haya sulam mutzav horza torud b'rayoyne hamischar, because he was a store owner in Salan. Levakesh torfoy kederech balabatim asher mechiyosem kaved lefnehem. He worked hard as a balabas in the store in order to make a living. V'roshai magia shamayim. Betir the gedolam l'chaye nafsho. But his roshai was meaning the magia shamayim. Herachti ma'at b'malos odem hagodol hazeh or oilam l'fi hasharasi yarich yom Hashem yomav u'shnoisav l'man yishmu habalabatim v'yelchu baruch. Today, I know people don't like to talk when someone is a balabas. They don't like to call him a balabas. You know, if he's a real ben Torah, which Farber was, the world that calls B'nai Torah don't come up to Karsulav and being a ben Torah. There's no comparison. What kind of ben Torah? But to me, it was the greatest thing to be able to tell the students that this fellow you view as a Malach Hashem, and I'm not being magzin. The women used to call, he's a Malach Hashem Tzvaka. Right? He's a balabas. He goes to work. He works every day, and then he comes to teach. Right? Rabbi Yisrael Salantis talked about his Rebbe. His Rebbe was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Mivolozhin, and then he went to learn by Reb Kiveger. And after that, he went to Eretz Yisrael. So he sold kerosene in Yerushalayim. He was a kerosene. But they didn't have a dayan. So they knew who he was. So they asked him to be the dayan. So he said, I'll be a dayan as long as you need a dayan. But if we find another dayan, I want to go back to selling kerosene. Right? And of course, Rav Shlomi Salad came and he became the dayan in Yerushalayim. Going oilam. But it's a balabas. That's what Yisrael Salantis says. The balabatim should go after. How many balabatim do we have like Mendel's? That's out. So little. He's the epitome of what a balabas should look like. And I was able to show my students that, yes, this is what a balabas should look like. The person that you're going to marry is going to be a balabas. This is the way he should look. I want to tell you, I once heard from my father, he heard it from, he was, I think, there. Rabbi Yaakov was talking to Rabbi Silver, the Rabbi of Cincinnati. And Rabbi Yaakov said over, they were talking about a Shaya, Rabbi Yaakov said over a Mishnah Brura. That wasn't like what Rabbi Silver held. So Rabbi Silver said, no, Chavetz Chaim was a balabas. He was a balabas in Radin. You know, he had a store in Radin. So Rabbi Yaakov said, a balabas in Bavli, a balabas in Yerushalmi, a balabas in Sifros Sifri, and Arbachel Kishultanor. I can't find a balabas. Mendel father was a balabas, but he was Kulei Torah. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for a person that Hirshfeld said it like he was Yoitza the Rambam and how much he worked and how much he learned. How many people are Yoitza the Rambam sheet than that? Reb Mendel for me was a Torah personality. What does it mean, a Torah personality? There's a controversial statement that Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik made about Rabbi Kook. One time he was talking to the class, and he said, they say Rav Kook was a philosopher, a philosopher. He's not a philosopher. It's about Rav Kook. I'm sure America's Rav Kook, they didn't like that idea so much. Not a philosopher. He's a Torah personality. That's what he said. Rav Kook was a Torah personality. How you become a Torah personality, I don't know. But I'm going to tell you a story of Rav Kook to show that he was a Torah personality. And he told, I'm going to say the story very short. Rav Kook, Rav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik came to Eretz Yisrael to be they thought about making him the Rav in Tel Aviv in 1936. And they took him to a kibbutz, one of the first kibbutzim that was started in Eretz Yisrael. Of course, completely secular. There was no Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It goes without saying, no Shabbos there. When he gets there, the person who drove him, when he got there, they came out with a bowl of fruit. So Rav Soloveitchik turned to the fellow who drove him. He says, I can't have the fruit. It's nicht kosher. Grapes. It was grapes. It's nicht kosher. They didn't take Trumas and Maisa. Can't have it. So the fellow overheard him who gave the grapes, and he said, Rebbe does kosher. Over here it's kosher. So Soloveitchik said, I went into shop. I know that the B'chalei Shabbos and everything. So Soloveitchik said, what do you mean? He says, Rav Kook came a number of years ago for Shabbos here. And of course, he brought along his own challahs and a little bit of food, and he was here the whole Shabbos. And he sat at a table, and he made kiddush, and he made a moitzi. And then he shmuzed with them. And then with Tzai Shabbos, they made a little Malava Malka for Rav Kook, and they asked him about where he comes from. Where was he from Lita, and where did he learn? Balozhin. And then he left. Taxi came in the morning to pick him up, and he left Sunday morning. As soon as he left, the head of the kitchen came out, and he said, throw out everything. We're kashering all the kalim. Buying new kalim and kashering all the pots and pans. So Rav Soloveitchik said, that's a Torah personality. He didn't have to say one word. If you were in the mechitza of Rav Kook for a Shabbos, you threw out all the kalim. All you had to be was in the Arba Amos of Rav Mendel Farber, and you were a different person. Of course, if you understood his Maharal and you understood his Taich and Chazal, it was Gavalti. But you didn't have to. Because he was a Torah personality. You just had to be there. I remember my student saying it. I saw a Farber today. Didn't need more than that. I want to tell you something that maybe it's a little bit controversial. I don't know. When I came to the Levaya, I was thinking about Rav Mendel, of course, all the way. I took a bus to the Levaya. I was thinking about Rav Mendel and all the years we spent together. And I'm not going to if I could speak longer, I would tell more stories about Rav Mendel. But I think that touches up Rav Mendel. I think Rav Mendel was a Torah personality. And we could say he was a Balabus and Bavli or Shalom Sifros Sifri. He really heard of it. He could say a taichin, just about everything. Whenever we spoke, a taichin anything. He could say a taichin a bookcase. It was just his depth. And his anivus, here Shemayim, like Rabbi Hirshfeld said, it was just, that's what filled the whole room with his anivus and his Yerushalayim. Just looked at him, and my grandfather used to say that that people who did Averis at night didn't want to see their Arizal in the morning because he was able to see on your forehead that you did Averis. When you saw Rav Mendel, you could see on his forehead the Yerushalayim and the Horavanya that he had in his learning and his Anivus, which was, everybody speaks about his Anivus. It's such an honor. But I'll tell you, when I was came to the Levaya, I don't know who that was, but I saw a soldier at the Levaya. He looked like actually a pretty serious soldier. He didn't look like when I went to the army. He looked like a very serious soldier. And immediately I started thinking, I don't know, Taka, was Farber sick? Was it expected for him to pass away? Was it not expected for him? But I started thinking that we could use Rav Farber upstairs. Klal Yisrael could use Rav Farber upstairs. We had him plenty downstairs, Baruch Hashem. We were Zoicha. But now they need him upstairs. And when I saw that soldier, I said, he could be a Melitz Yosher for Klal Yisrael. Could be a Melitz Yosher for the family, sure. He could be a Melitz Yosher for all the Chayalim that are putting their life on the line, and it could be a tremendous realization for the Shuyim. And I was thinking that could be that, again, I don't know if he was sick or he's not sick, but could be that that was the time to take the Farber because they needed someone up there and there was nobody who could match her phone.
Privileged to speak about Rabbi Farber next to his seat. It was someplace that was kavua, just as he was kavua for so many years. He really did have a part of my connection to this place because when I was considering coming here, so I asked Eitzah from Baron Schechter, Ratzal, just passed away, and I'd mentioned to him that Mendel Farber is here. So he said, ask Mendel to call me. So, and after he spoke, then he told me, he says, I spoke to him, you should go. And it's interesting that Farber was so machnia himself again to so many people. But to Baron, one of the Talmidim once said, he heard Rabbi Farber speak about Baron Schechter. He said, it's hard for him to imagine because Rabbi Farber is such a giant, and he speaks as if he's an ant compared to this person called Baron Schechter. He said, I'd like to even imagine what such a person is. I only got one letter once from a Baron, a short letter about something, and I'd mentioned to Rabbi Farber, he asked if I would copy it for him. He wanted to chazar it over, word by word, each thing, to see what he could get out of each word, each phrase of what Rosh Hashiva wrote. So I think all of us are trying to do a similar thing here, to try to figure out the secret of the tremendous hashpah, the tremendous impact he had on so many Talmidim, so many Talmidos, so many families of all types, each type, from the person with the quickest intellect to the one with the slowest, right? From the person who was more in the box or more out of the box. The impact was huge and still going on. And like a diamond that has many facets, everything that's being mentioned is true. What I wanted to speak about was Ahava, was the love. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit. In other words, there are some people who are loving people, and people respond to that nicely. And he certainly was that loving father figure, Zaidi figure for many people, but it's much more and it's much deeper. Rabbi Farber, you felt and connected to all of the Ahava that a Jew is supposed to have. The Avas Yisrael, Avas Torah, Avas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yisrael Oraisa Kuchabrichu Chadu was alive inside of him. When you connected to him, you connected to the tremendous love of all those things. His love of Eretz Yisrael. I was once in his apartment and he showed me the view from his merpeset that he loved so much, being able to see Yerushalayim, the place in which all those things can take place. And the question is, why was his love so strong, and why was his love able to be felt so strongly by everyone that came in touch with him? So I think I can apply a Sfas Emes to Rabbi Farber, the Sfas Emes in Parshas Shkolim, which speaks about the Machzis HaShekel, that half shekel that was given from the Mishkan, a half shekel of silver. And the strange thing about that donation was that unlike the other things, it was Hadal lo yamit, the poor person couldn't give less, but Ha'oshir lo yarbe, a rich person couldn't give more. Now, the Sfas Emes says that silver, the Machzis HaShekel, represents love. Kesef, like we say in Yedid Nefesh, ki nichsov nichsafti, I love. He says, it's a very difficult question how we can have a mitzvah to love. The Rishonim wrestle with this as well. There's a mitzvah of Avas Hashem, but Ava to me seems like something that I do or I don't, I'm not in control. How can there be a command for it? So the Sfas Emes explains that in fact, each of us has the Ahava implanted inside of us. He said that came at Matan Torah. He says, Ha'ava v'rotzim shenimtza b'libos b'nei Yisrael. The love and the rotzim that in the hearts of the Jews, he says, Ha'akoach asher nota Hashem yisborach v'zochenu beis kabbalas haTorah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put that into us. Ve'enu b'koach enoshi. It's not something that you made, unlike other midas, he says, like yira, in which a person does kafiko. But now he gets to the question. If it's true that Hashem put ahava inside of us, and he says the same measurement of ahava, right? The same, however many grams or liters of ahava were in there. So why was Rabbi Farber, and why am I me? Why was it that when a person met Rabbi Farber, that ahava engulfed them and drew them in and opened their ahava? Explains the Svasemis. He says, you're right. Matzinu ra'inu keish chasidim anshe ma'aseh she'avosem gedola b'ma'od mishar anoshim. He says, really, we know you do meet special individuals, that their ahava is much more than other regular people. Why should that be? He says, ein ze stira. It doesn't contradict what I said. For many reasons, but one is, hanekuda mispashetes kvi achonas hakli v'hamalbush. If you want to use a mashal for this, we have two light bulbs, the same wattage, 100-watt bulb, 100-watt bulb. One I put in a lamp which is covered in clear glass. The other I put in something that has a cover that's clouded and dusty. It's the same light bulb, but the light which is going to come out is going to be entirely different. The purity of one of the Hespedim with the Leviah, someone mentioned that his Rabbi described him as rain, as pure. That purity which was there enabled all that ava to shine and to go out to others and for them to be able to benefit from it. But the question again is, why was his glass so pure? Why wasn't not clouded by all these things? So this is the second part of the mitzvah of Avas Hashem. The Sefer HaChinuch says, how are you mevatel the mitzvah of Avas Hashem? The question of how you're mekayim is one thing, but a person also, you can end up being mevatel the mitzvah. He explains how over al zeh, one who transgresses the positive commandment of Avas Hashem, what does he do? He's kovea machshavta. He sets his thoughts in yonim gashmim, in physical things, bahavlei ha'olam, in the meaningless things of the world, shelo l'shem shamayim. It's not involving yourself in the physical world, l'shem shamayim. It's for the stuff, as the stuff. Raklis aneg mehem bilvat, just to have fun, enjoy. Olahasik kavod ha'olam hazeh, to get fame and honor. Lahagdil shmo, people should know your name. Lo l'kavona, right? Not in order to help people. He says a person who does that bitel mitzvahs asay zev ha'anshel gadol mo. He transgressed that mitzvah and the onish was great. Rabbi Farber, this was mentioned, he had no interest in those things. Any of those things which would be mevatel the ahava weren't there for him. It's not, again, that he wasn't a human being, right? Like the Kotzker said, Anshe Kodesh Tiumli, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many malachim. The trick is to be an ish, a human being who's Kodesh. He had these little things once he explained to us that a couple squares of dark chocolate, every day doctors say is good, but it has to be dark chocolate, not more than a couple squares. Right? This was, he knew the taste of things, he knew, but as was said, there was no discussion of any of those things at his home, ever. His children, his sons-in-law, all said for decades. It had no interest to him. It didn't draw him at all. And therefore his glass was clear. And therefore the ahava was there for everybody to connect to. He was this shining lighthouse of ahava, of love, of everything that a Jew should love. And it was there, and it was able to come and to influence other people. Why didn't those things speak to him? As we said, as was mentioned, he was human, he grew up. How is it that he became a person that wasn't interested in the basar v'dov v'chom that we're all interested in? So again, he saw something so beautiful in his Rosh Hashiva, in his Rebbeim, in what he had that really outshone anything else. That was what he would talk about. That was what would make his eyes light up. And that's why the other stuff, it just didn't talk to him. It was like Yosef, who was able to overlook Oshes Potiphar because he saw Dmus Diokno Shel Yaakov, Midas HaTiferes, a beauty which outshone her beauty. She had nothing to offer him. He had seen something much greater, much more beautiful. So that's the beauty that he brought. And this, I think, also is part of the sod of his dance. We have to mention the Rikud. it wasn't just something on the side. It was an expression of who he was. Many times a guy in the yeshiva would get engaged. His first concern was, where should I make the wedding so that Rabbi Farber will be able to be there? Should check the dates so Rabbi Farber will be able to be there, because if Rabbi Farber wasn't there to dance, I don't know, is it worth getting married? It's like, that's the main thing has to be. You want the kala to be there, Rabbi Farber has to be there. His Rebbe, Rav Hudner, said that there's a particular joy in dancing to music. Why? Because usually our physical self, the guf, is dominant. The guf is very immediate. We sense the needs of our guf, the wants of our guf, and the neshama somewhat is pushed down. But he says, here comes a nigun, here comes music, which is something ruchni. It's not anything tangible. And it gets the guf to move and to do because of that which is ruchni, because of that which is spiritual. That's what you would see with Rabbi Farber. Vayisa Yaakov Raglov. It says Yaakov lifted up his feet. His heart lifted up his feet. His dancing was never something calculated. I'm going to put my right foot here and my left foot there. It was something that came when you would watch him at any event of the yeshiva, when they were singing. So you would see he was starting already not to be able to sit in his chair. And then he would simply be up and dance and draw everyone into that dancing. It was a neshama that overpowered the guf. The movement of the guf was just expressing the joy and the love of the neshama. That's what was happening, and he was able to draw everyone else into it. So that's one side, one mahalach that the Sasana says. He has another mahalach, though, that also applies to Rabbi. He says the other answer, another approach can be to why you see certain special human beings who are so full of ava more than others. He says because it also relates to the halachas of machzis hashekel. No one person could give more than half a shekel, but a rich man could give half shekels for other people. He says sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives certain individuals more ava than anybody else, but it's given for them to distribute to others. It's not for them themselves. Just like the usher, a rich man's supposed to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me wealth, I'm supposed to be distributing it. I'm a gabbai for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So too, for Farber, everything he got, what he got from his rebellion, the madrigas he reached through his hard yigiyah, the love, the joy, he had no thought of keeping it for himself. It was there for everyone. We would send boy after boy over to the table, right? It would come over, it would say, my name's Mendel Farber, what would you like to learn? It was there. It could be a pasuk of Chumash and Rashi, it could be Maharal, it could be a pasuk he had to go over again and again with somebody. It wasn't about him. Whatever Hashem gave him, he knew was to be given and to be shared. So that, I think, also applies to, we sensed it, we were the beneficiaries of it. It was something that he enjoyed doing and doing with love. And the love was not also general. There's some people say, I love all Jews, so it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, love this one, love that one. He loved individuals. His Rabbi emphasized so much the power of the Yochid and the covet of the Yochid. People would pour their hearts out to him. He would think about their problems and try to come up with solutions afterwards. Each person was a world for him, an individual that he cared about so much. And that's what people responded to. That's what people felt. This type of ahava is not an ahava that goes away. It's an ahava that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. And like HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ahava is avas olam avtich. It's a love which is forever. So too, the love that Rabbi Farber transmitted and still has for us is avas olam, and will be melitz yosher for all those who learned from him, who taught alongside of him, and his family, of course, and all of Am Yisrael, who he loved so much.
Arrived at the yeshiva about 19 years ago. came here, basically had no background, barely knew the alphabet. My social network, my friends, were all goyim, and many of them were criminals. Let's fast forward 19 years. Here we are today. I don't want to tell you about my accomplishments because I don't feel that I've accomplished a lot. I want to tell you about my son. A few months ago, he made a bar mitzvah, and something remarkable happened. He made a siyum on the entire Talmud Bavli, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. He went through the entire Shas. On several of the Masechtas, he was tested by Mori Rabbi or Shiva Pakad Yitzchak. How did we get from point A to point B? The answer is the inspiration, the guidance, and the light Rabbi Farber gave us. Someone mentioned at the Levaya that he used to say, if you want to know the essence of something, you have to look at the first time that it appears in the Torah. I want to tell you about the first time that I was really exposed to him. I was here in the yeshiva for a little while. I didn't have a relationship with him at the beginning. There was a Shabbaton to the south. Shabbos day, we went on a hike, the whole yeshiva, and we were walking through the desert. It was hot. We were wearing sneakers, rolled up their sleeves, wearing shorts. Rabbi Farber was head to toe in his Shabbos attire. His hat, long black frock, his tie, his Shabbos shoes. The contrast between the background, the desert mountains in the background, and this individual, it almost looked like somebody had taken him and transported him from somewhere else and put him in a place that he doesn't belong. That image was his essence. Chazal teach us, Im domer rav l'malach Hashem tzvakos yivakshu tormitim. V'im lav, al yivakshu tormitim. If the Rav is like an angel, learn from him. And if he's not, don't learn from him. The famous question, I never saw an angel. So how do I know if my Rav looks like an angel or not? So there are many answers that are offered. But for us, the Talmidim, the question is not a question, and we don't need any answers. We saw a Malach Hashem Tzvakos. What would it be like if an angel would come and reveal himself to you? You would see this spiritual being, and the setting around him would be the complete opposite. The contrast would be remarkable. This is what we saw with Rabbi Farber. The Maharal explains that the reason why the Gerim appear in the bracha for tzaddikim is because the tzaddikim are Gerim b'olam hazeh. I was so inspired by this individual. One Shabbos, the Oneg, there were about maybe 80, 90 people here, and we had an opportunity to ask questions. So I asked him, why did you come here? You could probably be doing so many amazing things with your life. Why did you choose to come here? He said, I came here for you. In the moment, I thought it was a nice statement. History proved the sincerity of that statement. From that point on, he invested in every single facet of our life. Our children, our sons, our daughters, our house, the relationship with my Rosh Yeshiva. He made the relationship between me and him. He maintained the relationship between me and him. That was the investment. A Malach has crystal clear clarity in what he knows and what he doesn't know, what his mission is and what it's not. When it came to advice, It was clear. He knew exactly what he knew and knew exactly what he didn't know. If he didn't know, we weren't going to talk about it. And when he knew, it was obvious. I merited to learn with Rav Moshe Shapiro Zechatzai Levraka in a small group for many years. At one point, I was in yeshiva on one side of Yerushalayim, and the shir was on the other side. I wasn't sure, is it worth all the time traveling back and forth? To him, it was obvious. The answer was, if Moshe Rabbeinu would be giving a shir, would you wait in traffic? Everything was clear. I once decided that I needed to go on a trip to try to bring someone back, Machzir and B'tshuva. So I booked a flight. The day came, it was cold, it was raining. I caught a cold, and very quickly, my inspiration was going down, down, down. I thought, I'm not going to succeed on this trip. That day I had a rus with Rabbi Farber. And he did something that he never did before, and he never did again. He sat right here. We would learn years and years and years we were learning. And many times, the day that we were learning, I was going to be flying later on. I told him, after the Havrusa, I need to catch a flight. He said the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal was makbid b'malave. Rav Hutner would always accompany his students when they were going on a trip. He got up, took my hand, walked me out of the base midrash, out of the yeshiva, onto the street. The trip was a success. By the end of the flight, I was already feeling well. Baruch Hashem, the mission was accomplished. This is the clarity that he had. This is the investment that he made in us. And you would expect, after all of this investment, decades of investing in people, perhaps he would accept a little bit of kavod. Here, the chiddush wasn't just that he wouldn't accept any kavod. The chiddush is how he wouldn't accept it. If I wouldn't accept kavod, I would say, no, please, it's not necessary. That wasn't his reaction. What was his reaction? He would laugh. If I would stand up for him, I was waiting right here, have a havrusa with him, he would walk in, I would stand up, I would try to refer to him as Rabbi or any form of honor, he would laugh. Who laughed? Yishmael. It says in the Parsha that Yishmael was Mesachek. Chazal explained that what does Mesachek mean? 3 cardinal sins. Idolatry, murder, and adultery. How did Chazal see in the word schok, laughter? There's 3 cardinal sins. Murder, adultery, idolatry. Explains the Maharal that schok is bilti metzias. Schok is not a part of reality. Schok is the antithesis of reality. If you make a joke out of somebody, it's like the person doesn't exist. Murder is the antithesis of the human existence. Idolatry is the antithesis of the divine existence. Adultery is the antithesis of the family existence. For him, kavod was schok. It didn't exist. There was no being mechaved. There was no room for it. It wasn't a part of his reality. He spent 90 years being a Malach Hashem Tzvakos down here in a foreign environment. Now he ascends on high to be a Malach Hashem Tzvakos in his natural environment. May he be a Meili Tzosha for all of us.
Okay. Reuven was speaking.
First, you have to be poischim. I want to open up with Abba Irene Kaparas Mishkova always said the schus he has. He always mentioned Rav Karlinsky and the whole staff, and that he has the schus and he has the Karas HaTorah over 30 years that is able to be Marbitz Torah here and give over, be Mashpia, Torah and Yiddishkeit. Always mentioned that. With Karlinsky and the whole staff, everybody. His great Karas HaTorah, that's his Metzias. Battle himself and the Ayin Torah to everybody. That's the first thing. What could I speak? Especially after hearing all these words we heard now. I don't have what could I get on? Just that Mitzad representing the family, the children, our feelings. We're speaking in the place where he was Mashpia, Torah, and Yiddishkeit to Talmidim, like we know, and we heard, and that it's not only he was Mashpia only on his Talmidim, but in his class, the whole Beis Medrash, he had a hashpah, he enlightened environment, the whole Beis Medrash. We heard in the Shiva, the whole people say, I wasn't in his class, I wasn't in the Shiva, but Rabbi Farber, I saw him, it was mashpia on me, and I would go over to him, I would go over, he used to come learn, and come sit down with me, Ben Asdorim, whenever it was, a whole day from the morning to night, like I mentioned, he sat here from early in the morning, and late at night, and late until late afternoon, the evening.
Whatever it takes.
The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, I don't know how to express myself in words. I'll say over the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kishachol Rabbi Lezer. So Nichnasu Arbas Keinim Levakra, Rabbi Tarfoin, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Musa ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lezer was ill, so his four Talmidim of his big Talmidim came in. There's not a Rabbi Tarfon v'Omar. Tarfon said, Toiv Atol Yisrael mitiba shel Shomim. He said, Rabbi Lezer, you're good to Klal Yisrael more than a tipa shel Shomim, rain. Because tipa shel Shomim is B'olam Hazeh, and Rabbi is B'olam Hazeh and B'olam Haba. Rabbi Shua said, Toiv Atol Yisrael Yosef Medal Chamer. You're good to Klal Yisrael more than the sun. The sun, same thing. Gal Cham is B'olam Hazeh, and Rabbi is B'olam Hazeh and B'olam Haba. Elizabeth Isaiah said, Toiv Atol Yisrael Yosef Mi Avoim. Same thing. Avoim is B'olam Hazeh, and the Rabbi is B'olam Hazeh and also B'olam Haba. Then Rabbi Kiva got up and he said, Chavivim Yisurim. Said Yisurim, Achaviv, a person has Yisurim, hardships. Yisurim, Chavivim Yisurim. When Rabbi Lezer heard that, it says, Omalem Samchuni, lift me up. He was lying. He said, Samchuni, lift me up. The Eshmo Didre Rabbi Akiva Talmidi. I want to hear again, I want to hear where did he get this source from? The Gemara brings a drush over there, a whole cheshbon, Mikad Chavivim Yisur. So we see over here that the Talmidim came in. How do they relate to the Rebbe? They relate to the Rebbe like like a typical kshomi. He's related to the Rebbe like a galgal chamel, like rain, like the sun, like a avoim, father and mother. These are things that they give, they mashpia, they cause life to the whole world. Without rain, there'll be there's no chayim. Without chama, without the sunshine, there's no chayim. There's no kiyum. Without avoim, there's no kiyum. That's how that's in simple. There's a moral over here explains what each one. There's no real machlokes over here. There's no disagreement. Everybody is talking on a different concept, a different bechina. But you see that, and they say that the Rebbe is better than typical Kshonim because the Rebbe is not also. But that's how they look. In that piece, what they can be masig, what they can understand in something that's good. His goodness is rain. It's the hashpah of the chayim, the life of the whole bria, or the sun. That's what a Rebbe is. He's over aim. The Kiva comes and he says, "No, Chavim Yisur." Over here, Reb Lezer gets lift me up. I have to hear this again. What's the pshat in this? So the Maharal is Ma'arich. He has a whole arichas in the Sidus. He says like this. He says there are different ways a person is mashpia on others. He has influence on others. He says you can have an influence on someone like a typical kshomi. Rain is something that, what do? You plant. Everybody has in him a potential. He has kochot. He has knowledge. Our goal is to take out all our potential, what we have in us. That's how our avoid it. That's how we work. We have to strive to take out all our koiches. To be, says like you plant a seed. So there's a lot of also kochot. There are a lot of koiches in the earth, and when you put a seed in, so you cause to be moitzi me'akoyach halapoya. The earth, all the minerals that there are, the Jew, the Yanika, says without rain, it's not going to grow. Says so a Rebbe has an influence. He's like a typical kshomi that he influences on the Talmud like water, like shomim, that's going to cause that he'll be able to be motzi me'akoach halapoya, all his potential knowledge and all his potential kochot that he has in it. That's the first, what Reb Tarfon said. Toiva Toli Yisrael, better than Tibur Hashem because it's also Elam Abba. But that's his tfisa. In the Rebbe, he's like a Tibur Hashem that he gave the Talmidim the ability. The abilities that he'll be able to be moitzi me'akoyach halapoya, his potential kochot. So then he says, Yeshua said, "Toiva Torah Yisrael migalgol chama." So galgol chama. We just hang over the Maharal. The Maharal says, "You have an eye." Says that to be moitzi the light, with the light you can be moitzi the vision me'akoyach halapoya. He says not only he was mashpia rain, the typical chomim in the Talmidim, to give them the ability of being taking out their potential. Rather, well, he took out you were galgal chama. You took out the vision that me'akoyach halapoel mamish. Says then Rabbi said even more. Said you're like a avoim. According to the Rabbi Shua, there was already an eye. Just to take out the potential, the vision of the eye with the galgal chama. He says, you Abraham, you created the whole tzuras adam, the whole adam. You created the eye. You created the whole adam, the whole person, everything you create. He says it's three madregas. That's hashpah. And the Mara says they're all correct. all Emet, all these, every Talmud had his Bechina, his Tfisa in the Rebbe. He says, Kulam Emes. Like we said, like I've already mentioned already that we heard, we knew this, that Avinu, Reinu Kamas Mishkova, would sit here with his anivus, and he was Makrin, he shined on the Holy Medrash. Talmidim that were in his class, in Shia, not in his class, wherever, by the girls, his ashpah was every corner, everybody. All the Talmidim, a Talmud, he gave that his ashpah was a type of ashpah that those Talmidim that needed the typical Shomit. That's the things that we not taking out the potential, just the hechsher, the hachanat, the typical Shomit that's going to cause the hoitzah. That's one type of Talmud. There's a Talmud that he already took out. Galgal Chama, he took out. Other Talmidim, he built them. The ganze Tzura Sodom, the whole Odom. That's Hashpah on everybody. Toiva told Yisrael, we can say, and Avinu, Zechain Levrocha, Areinu Kabaras Mishkovoi, in the Beis Medrash and also at home, in the name of his Hashpah was in all corners, in all this, the Shetchei HaChayim, everything his Hashpah was in everything. Rabbi Kiva comes and he says, I'm trying to express, really I'm not getting on anything. After all these drushes, these beautiful drushes that we heard, the whole emes, just trying to express mitzad, the family, the children, my sisters are here, my brothers and brother-in-laws. That's what we felt. His ashpah was Bildi Mugbal, unlimited. All the Shetchei HaChayim in the house, like in the yeshiva, like we heard now in the yeshiva, the same thing. The Kiva comes and he says, Chaviv Yisrael. Rabbi Lezer wakes up over here, lift me up. Rabbi Lezer says, lift me up, I have to hear this. Where did you get this? What's the connection? Maza Shaya. The Talmud, his Talmudim came in, Rabbi Lezer is ill. His Talmudim coming to visit him, they come to praise him. What's this that Rabbi Kiva says, Chaviv Yisrael, but he has Yisurim, Rabbi Lezer is ill, and he wants to hear it. What's the connection to he came in there, the Mashmal says all the Talmudim came in together. He didn't come, he started a detour, he said something else, Lokashur, not connected to what they said before. Maran says will be a double noila. Maran says, this means it's washing. He says, Zeu Yosef on the Yisurim, what Rabbi Kiva said, he said, Zeu Yoter Mikol Hamadregos. What Rabbi Kiva said, Chaviv Yisurim is Yoter, is more than the other Madregas that Rabbi Tarfon said, Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Zabazaya. שאינם נחשבים נגד היסורים, שהם ממלכים ומזכים הנפש ומתרנס הנפש, עד שהוא נעשה מסולוק מן הגשמי. ודבר זה יויסר מכל המיילויס, כי בעל היסורים הוא נעשה נבדל מן החומרי, עד שהוא בן עולם הבא, וזה יותר מן הכל, יויסר מן הכל. Rabbi Kiva came to say over here, Chaviv Yisurim, the Rebbe, you also, Rabbi Lezer, you were Bal Yisurim. You had hardships. So this is something in you. It builds you. The Maral says that's not an influence on others. The other Talmidim said the influence that the Rebbe had on others. Rabbi Kiva said, I want to speak about Rabbi Lezer himself. He was a Bal Yisurim. And he elevated himself over his Yisurim, over all his hardships, all his tirdas. He spoke that he was a balabas, he had business. I know from close. In many years we learned Chavrusim. I was a Bachan Kol Torah. Used to come every day from town. Muktash used to come to Kol Torah, and I remember from Ellinger, They were mispal. I used to speak to them. After we used to learn a whole Seder, I used to have an artist. I used to go down to Rabbi from Ellinger with a smile every day. Your father, he would wait for me to speak and learning. What are you doing with your father there? Rabbi from Ellinger, Moshe Yehuda, talking about the Lamed. He came every day mutash, tired, over from early in the morning. He would start to learn for 3 or 5 minutes. He would Yishim line. He would wake up as like a lion, like Ari, sitting the whole say the 3 hours we learned. As I Meirdik, Givaldik. I used to get a Chalisha Zadas in the late 70s when I was in Kultaya. Years later, he was full with hardships, with Yisurin, with Tirdas. Chavim Yisurin, but if you can be elevate yourself Lamalaf and all these Tirdas, from all these hardships. You can elevate yourself. So that's Yosem and Akol. You become pure, the mouse. You're Mesuluk min Agashmi. Avinu was Mesuluk, was Mesuluk min Agashmi. Namish. He was Lamalaf in it. It was a big avoider. He was Maki. He was Mesuluk min Agashmi. He was in the Gashmi and he was Mesuluk min Agashmi. He was in it and he elevated himself above it. He was Luchli. He was a Luchli. And I understand, and I stand from the Maral. The Maral wasn't saying clear, but what Abba used to say, the Maral is married so much because he always one point he doesn't want to speak out, and he wants you to figure it out. How could a Rebbe be a Tipa Shokshomim? How could he be a Galgal Chama? How could he be a Ovaim like Maral says that your Ashpor is built in Mugbal? It's in the Beis Medrash in every corner, every Talmud. If you were in his class, you were not in his class. Oh, Rabbi Farber, I was in his class, but he had a great influence on me. Because he's about Yisurim. And what is a Chavivim Yisurim? He's Mesuluk Menagashmi. He can elevate himself, the Malach, and all the hardships that he had, and all the Tirdas, and all this V'chulei. He never spoke to us. In those years that he came to learn with me, he told me once, it was the millions were rolling over there to him. Can ain't not one word. I was a young boy. I was 17, 18. But afterwards I thought he never mentioned to me. With your son, Chapashmuz, the business. Not one word. It's unbelievable. He came, he would keep a line for 5 minutes, and he would look like a lion. I got a Chalisha Zadas, with the Kapshat, with a Toisvis, with a Marshah. I'm saying over what I feel, what we all feel. I'm still in the name of if you saw a person that was his whole that what he gave over. He used to walk back and forth. He told me, you should know, Shimon, when I'm walking, my head is not here. My head is somewhere else. He said, I don't see anything because I'm not because I'm a frum or I'm not here. I'm somewhere else. I'm elevated above all this. That's he said. What the Marshal says that about Yisurim is Yoisim and Akol because he's Mesuluk and Agashmi. Yoisim and Akol relates to the first 3 mandom. If you're about Yisurim, if you can be Saleh, you can be Mashpia. You're pure, like imagine a pure person. So his Ashpa is Mashpia, built in Mugbal, unlimited. That's our Gosha. I want to say one more thing. There's a Gemara in Baba Basra. The Gemara says, Amar Yishlogish Rabbanon loitzrichin et Yerusa. Rabbanon, the Gemara is talking about a play Misim for the Shem Re'ir, Asubir. The Gemara gives a drasha. Rabbanon don't need a Shmira, they have the Torah. The Gemara says, the Ki Asa Rabbi, we come to Rabbi Yechanan, when Yishlogish came in front of Rabbi Yechanan, Amalei, my time aloi, time aloi. Why don't you tell them from here? It says, Ani choyma, v'shadak in migdolos. Ani choyma, Torah. V'shadak in migdolos, ultimate chachamim. So you see, if Talmud Chacham is like a choyma, they have a shmira. They have he says, the Rabbeinu Gershon over there says, Sharek in the Gdolis, Yom Techomim, Elu Talmid Echom Shaloim Din Zeh Mizeh, Ketinok Yoinek Mishdayimot. Rabbi Gershom Yitzchak points out, but the Gemara says, Sharek in the Gdolis are Talmid Chachomim, that it says, why is it in the Pasuk says it as Sharek in the Gdolis? These are Talmid Chachomim, that they learn from each other like a Tinok Shoyonek Mishdayimot. Why can't you can't learn from I give you a cup, I give you something food. That's what it says. She gives, say that we're not connected. It's nice to give food to someone, a drink to someone. But a mother, a tinok, a tinok eating from his mother, so the mother gives her life, her etzem atzmiyut, her etzem life she gives. Talmidei Chachomim learn from each other. He was a Talmud Chacham, the Pshat is, that's his ashpah because he gave his life. He didn't give, okay, I'm Yitzchak Zayin. Okay, come, we'll learn. Like I can give you something. I'm giving you my neshama, Kitina Kiyonik Mishdayimah. That reminds us of another Chazal. That's also, on the Pasuk it says, Ki Hashem Yiten Chochma Mipiv, Das Usvuna. Medrash says, Lamad Avadoyme, L'melech Shohay Eloi Ben. His son came from the Beis HaSefer, from the school, from the Cheder. So Motza Tamchui. Lifnei Aviv, he saw a pot with food in front of his father. So not al Aviv Chaticha, his father took a piece from the Tamchui. The Nostale gave it to his son. So the son told Amalei, Eini mevakesh elimi mashe b'toich pichu. I don't want to eat something similar to what you eat. I want to eat what you're eating. What you ate, I want to eat. And that's what the Shakhaim says. That's the remes. Ketina kabon bi beisefer. If you want to learn a tina that was learning Torah, he was in a beisefer. So not al says eini mevakesh el mashim bipichu. That we also saw in Abba Areinu Kabaras Mishkava. His whole chinuch, his whole ashpo, with his whole whatever he did, I'm not going to go into stories here. His Ava, his Kulei Ava, he was Kulei Toiv. Just like he was Kulei Ava and Kulei Toiv in the Beis Medrash, he was Kulei Ava, Kulei Toiv to his children, his Mishpacha. He was Matriach himself. He went out of his way. He went out of his way. Sometimes, like they spoke about his Another, we saw that's how shiftless Another to make sure that this son and this grandson and this granddaughter and this daughter. And Milim, there's no words to it. His too. It was mamish. He gave his neshama like in the tinaka hayonik mishdayimah. Eini mevakesh el mashe betoich picha. He gave himself. He gave over to his children, to his talmidim, his Abbas Yisrael. Rather nowadays, on these times, it's not to get to tziyonis. Once we were together, one of the other miftzayim, and we heard we're in a taxi or a bus, or I don't think it was in a car. We heard a chadashot. It was then we said, we have misfalzai, we have to daven for them, the moisen nefesh. And it's not to get to tziyonis. He was a pure Abbas Yisrael, mamish, to every Yid. He loved every Yid. Like in the Beis Medrash, in the Mishpacha, Klal Yisrael, mamish, even if he was weak in the past few years, but if he left, of course when he was here, we used to go in and he would see us. Now he's not here, it's very hard. We're not a young man, we're not young people, and Abba was also, he had to save the Torah, but it's hard. It's hard for the whole family, for the brothers and the sisters, a lookout. That's a good sign. That's a sign that he gave his chayim over to us. And we would double all the years that he was ill, how my sisters, Aderet, the brother, Avram, Yeshua, everybody, the vacuous we had in him, it came from him. It started from him. Like I said, that he gave his neshama. He was about Yisurim, he had different hardships, big hardships. I know things that others don't know. He elevated himself lamala. He was misled. The Maral says he was mesulot menagashi. In Besuch von der Gashmi, you can be a typical Shomim, you can be a Galgal Chamo, you can be a Ovo Ein to Talmidim, we're also Talmidim. Ovo Ein. You should be a Melitzioshe to the yeshiva that he always spoke about, admired, had a Karasatoy, they have such a schools of Karlinsky and those stuff. Gesedi with Mamish HaKarasatoy, and his schools that he has. It's a shame. The Eibishter would give weiter, he would be Melitzioshe for us, for the family, for the yeshiva, with Karlinsky. We'll have you tell Adira, we should have Psuas Toivis, be as girl Tzedek B'Meila.